Today I'm joined by Lee-Ann Persse. Lee-Ann is double Olympian, representing South Africa in rowing at the Olympics 2012 and 2016. Welcome, Lee-Ann.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Lee-Ann, how did you get into rowing? I don't think that's the first thing that a young girl is looking for, a sport as rowing to join. How did you get into it?
It was actually at school that I started to get involved with rowing. I was more of a ball sports player, actually, like hockey, tennis, and then a lot of my friends were doing rowing at school. So I just, they kind of were like, we need someone to come and join the team, and you're nice and tall, and you look like you're suited to rowing. So why don't you come along? And I went and joined them for a session, and then I did like really well on the ergo machine, which is like our rowing testing machine. I got a really good score, and that was like the last time I saw any other sport. And I was fully into rowing after that.
That's cool. At what age was that?
I was around 16 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think you could have been better if you started earlier?
Sure. I actually had this conversation with someone the other day. But no, I don't really think about it. I think the fact that I experienced other sports was actually really good for me. I don't think I would have been any better if I started earlier. I think at such a young age, you kind of, just enjoying the sport at the time anyway. So I think for me, it was the perfect time.
Yeah. Okay, cool. In your athletic life, what was your darkest moment?
Sure. I don't think I know. It was definitely the results from the London Games. Myself and my partner had only been rowing together since 2011. Yeah, so 1 year, basically 1.5 years to London when we rowed together. And there was just a lot of pressure on us to get a good result. I don't know, I think we were putting pressure on ourselves, and we felt external pressure as well, but we were still a very young crew. And I just think we weren't really ready for the moment. It's a really big moment, and when you're not expecting it, then it kind of takes over your emotions and your nerves and stuff. And I think for me especially, I just kind of gave into the nerves, and I wasn't really able to perform to my best at the time, I don't feel like. And I think the moment was just too big for me, actually. I think that's something that I've come to realize, is that it was just too much, and I didn't know how to deal with the pressure at the time. I didn't know what to do, and I was just so nervous, and I just so badly wanted to perform well, and we didn't in the end. Maybe like for a new crew, we actually did perform well, but from like the pressure, and the other South African crew that was with us, they won gold. So it was quite quite a feat for them, and then we came 8th, and it just felt like so much disappointment afterwards. And all the hype was obviously around the guys winning gold, and you just kind of feel quite dejected, and you feel like you've let people down, I think you don't really know where to go from there. So I think it was definitely a very, very low moment, and definitely my darkest moments in sport. It was a hard time.
And if you say you gave into the nerves, how do I have to think about that? You went out too strong, or what happened in terms of performance on the moment itself?
Yeah, so for me, the nerves, it was like I couldn't row as hard as I wanted to. It was kind of like you get like a jelly kind of feeling, and you're kind of like not as sharp as you're meant to be when you like putting the blade in the water. It's obviously quite a technical sport, so you kind of need to be on it all the time. And it just didn't feel like I was like on it, basically. I just wasn't 100% there, and the nerves just made it worse.
And then two follow-up questions.
Yeah.
How did you recover from it? And what did you learn for Rio?
So it took us a while to, I think, figure out how we wanted to recover. I think we both me and my partner at the time, we like stepped away from rowing for a bit and we had a break. We felt like that was the best thing, just to, get away from each other and from the team. Also, the South African team, kind of after each Olympic Games, they kind of have like a 3-month break when they just, you're still training, but you're away from the team and you're kind of just like reassessing the next cycle. And yeah, I just spent quite a bit of time with my family, and I also actually went and rowed in France. For me and my partner, we actually went and rowed in France, so we didn't actually stay away from rowing, but we did something that was like really fun, and it was kind of a detraction from like the seriousness of rowing for South Africa and trying to achieve. And we like met a whole lot of new friends and was in a different country, and it was just, it was like a lot of fun. And I think we had I can't remember exactly, how we decided, but I'm sure we had conversations during that time about how we're going to do things better going into the next 4 years. And I think we both decided that we definitely did not want the next Olympic Games to be anything like London. And we wanted to prepare as best as we could so that it wasn't the same feeling and it wasn't the same experience for us. We wanted to perform and we wanted to enjoy it most of all. So yeah, we decided that, and from there we kind of just, we're like, okay, well, how are we going to do that? And that was when we, started talking about like mental aspect of things and how we're going to deal with nerves. Are we communicating with each other properly? Do we have good communication with our coach? Is the person coaching us the right person? Kind of had like all those conversations, and we almost felt like we needed to start all over again, or like start afresh, I think is maybe the right word. Yeah.
And also looking a little bit at the bigger picture, right? So conversations, support staff, all these kind of things.
Yeah, definitely. And just being realistic. I think that was the main thing, is that we felt like we weren't realistic with our expectation of our result. And that's why it was so much harder to deal with, because we went in there believing like we could do so well, and we actually weren't at that level. And it makes it like even more disappointing when that happens. So from then on, we were always just going to be like, we are going to be honest with ourselves about how we feel like we can perform at every race we go to. We need to say like, we believe that we can perform at this level and we can get this result. And we need to be honest about that, because, if you're unrealistic, sure, things can just unravel. You have to be so realistic about where you think you're at and how good or badly you think you're going to perform.
Yeah. What was your best moment?
Sure. Well, I think it's pretty easy to follow on from this, but definitely rowing at Rio was just so different to London. I felt like everything we discussed from London going to Rio, we put into place, and we made it a much better experience. Even though in the end, I actually rowed with a different partner in Rio, I still worked with my partner from London through a lot of stuff, and I think it made us better athletes and people. When we worked through those things, and it was just feeling like I was so prepared when I got to Rio. I was like prepared for the nerves. I was prepared for the moment. I felt like I could just get there and race as hard as I can, and that's all I needed to do. I didn't need to worry about anything else. And obviously the whole South African team did things very differently. Obviously the whole team learns from cycle to cycle how to prepare better, and so that also helped us that the whole team vibe and the whole team preparation was a lot better. So that also helped us. And I think I was just felt ready to race and ready to perform, and I felt like I could do that to the best of my ability when we got to Rio. And once you race and you feel like you've put it all on the line and you've given it everything you've got, then like, what more can you ask for? There's nothing really more you can ask for after that.
Yeah, so it's all in the preparation is what I hear.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. If you could travel back in time, 10, 15 years, what advice would you give a younger you?
I'm obviously, the people who follow me, I talk a lot about my retirement from rowing. And I think the advice that I would give myself will be that you won't always be a rower, or you won't always be an athlete. And there will be a time where you where that ends, and there's another part of your life. And I think going back, I would have really liked to prepare for that moment a lot better. So it's definitely advice I would have given my younger self. And I think as well, just spending more time, well, maybe not spending more time with my family, but realizing what an important part of my life they are. I think that I lived away from home. My parents lived in Cape Town. I lived in Pretoria for 10 years, and it is hard to be away from your family for so long. But I think I only really realized what an impact it had on me when I stopped rowing. And I think I really would have liked to have more balance when I was rowing, more, time where I spent with my family and included them in things I was doing. So yeah, I think definitely preparing for retirement one day, and balance, I think, as well, is really important.
Yeah, I guess we speak about that later a little bit, about the preparation, or for retirement. But what exactly would you advise someone to do? How would you prepare for that?
Sure. I think obviously everyone's different, but I think studying is probably a good place to start. Maybe having something to, backup, basically, getting a degree or some experience in some form. And I think financially it's really tough because, especially in South Africa, rowers, we don't earn a lot of money. So it's really hard to, put away a life savings while you training and competing at the Olympics. So financially it's quite tough, and I think it's also something you have to think about. I think just, thinking about how your life is going to change once you stop being an athlete, and how you're going to deal with that. And I mean, those are like the logistical side of things. It's the mental side of things as well. That's also a massive thing, just the way that it hits you that you're no longer part of a team, or you're no longer training so hard every day. Those things also take their toll. So it's like there's both logistical things that you need to think about, and the mental side of things as well that you need to think about, that are really important, because the mental side can put you down for a long time as well. It can really stop you from moving on with your life.
Yeah. Talking about a younger you, today is the national holiday, the Freedom Day in South Africa.
Yeah.
So 26 years ago was the first post-apartheid elections. Do you have any recollection on that day? I mean, you were quite young. I think you were 5 to 6 years old, but do you have recollections how it was before and certainly after?
I unfortunately do not have very good memories of that time. I think a lot of it is in the history books, and we learnt a lot about it. And a lot of our history that we do in school is surrounded, with Nelson Mandela and what he did for our country. And I probably did like 5 or 6 projects on him when I was at school through my school years. So definitely learnt about it. But my recollection of those times is not very good, unfortunately.
Okay. Then the next question on the same topic. In 1995, South Africa hosted the Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
And that was the first time South Africa was allowed to play in the World Cup, and they ended up winning. How was it for the country?
Sure. I mean, I think it was amazing. I was also quite young then, but I do remember, painting South African flags on my face, and I think probably watching some of the game. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I think it was a massive step in the right direction for our country, and just, help to unify our country even more. I think sport is such a massive part of South Africa, and whenever athletes or teams do well in sport in South Africa, it just seems to just like boost our nation and boost the morale. And you can't believe what good results in sport can do for a nation. It's crazy. But I mean, actually today I was just watching like a recap of the World Cup that we just won. And as well, I mean, it's the same thing. It just like unifies a nation and just like brings up everyone's morale. And you just can't believe what it can do for a country. It's amazing.
Yeah, cool. What are the habits that make you a successful person or athlete or athlete?
Sure. I think there's something that I always live by, and that's consistency in everything that you do. It was something that we definitely learned leading up to London, is that we didn't have enough of it. We didn't have enough consistency in our training, and consistently doing the same thing the right way, so it was making us stronger or making us faster. We just weren't consistent enough. There was too much injury, and things like that going on. So, and that just like reminded us that we need to be consistent in our preparation. It even comes to like stretching, nutrition, preparing for sessions, all those kind of things. That's that's just key to performance. And I still believe in it, even like not as an athlete, like consistency in life as well. And all the things you do in life is just as important. So something that, really from London to Rio, it was like my mantra: consistency. If anyone asked me, what are you doing? I'm like, consistency is key. that is my mantra. And it really worked for me. And it was great. And then I'd say belief in myself, belief in the person I was rowing with, belief in the team, belief in the training program. Those are all like really crucial things. And if you 100% believe in what you're doing and that it's working, then it's all in the mind. A lot of it's all in the mind. So it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. If you believe it, then it's probably working for you. And the last thing is honesty. I think that's also a massive thing to success, is just being honest with yourself firstly about your performance and your training, being honest with the people that you're rowing with, your team, and making sure that you're honest with your coach. You've just got to put everything on the table. You can't have secrets, you can't have doubts. So everything's just got to be set out there and clear.
I've seen in the documentary, I cannot remember when it was, a few years ago, but something that stuck with me. It was about rowing, and it said rowing makes you tough. And the explanation was because it's on the water every single day, whether it's good weather or not. You have to be out there.
Yeah.
Talk us through that.
Yeah, it's not very often that a rowing session gets cancelled. I think if the waves are like tsunami size and they're filling your boat and you capsizing, then you can maybe look at getting off the water. But we always say that we train in every condition so that we can race in any conditions. And that was kind of the mantra. Yeah, it was just like the weather has to be really, really bad for you not to get out there in the water. We train rain and heavy winds, all those kind of things. So it was, you just put your boat on the water, head down, and you go, and that was it. So there's no excuses. And it was always just like, if we train in the worst weather, then we can race in the worst weather. So that was the mantra for that.
Cool. Do you have a morning routine?
I'm like trying to think, like at the moment, no, not really. But when I was an athlete, I think, I basically, woke up the same time every morning for training, and I would always get dressed first, and then coffee, breakfast, like make all my water bottles and like my post-training shakes or whatever it was. And then, into the car and off to training. So it wasn't really anything hectic. But you kind of just get into a rhythm, and days just start blending into each other. But that was kind of the routine, I guess. I can't like remember exactly. I don't think I lived by it religiously.
Okay, cool. How do you prepare for important moments?
Sure. It's an interesting question, because I think I'm actually someone who doesn't like to think about things too much. So if there is an important moment coming up, so say for instance it's a rowing race or important trial, training trial, I just, you have to think about it, but I try not. I try block it out as much as possible and just focus on the things that's happening during the day. So if we have the training sessions going up to that, moment, then it's just like, okay, how am I going to do the session the best as I can? And then, assess the session afterwards and then move on to the next sessions. It's kind of just like breaking it down and not trying to think too far ahead. Because, I can like thinking ahead to like a big moment can almost overtake all your thoughts. And then you start to get really nervous, and then that starts affecting your training and the way that you're thinking and stuff. So, I would just say, like, I like to break it down into little bits and just focus on one thing at a time. And then, take it from there. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. I've never rowed in my life, or at least not competitively, but I believe I have a decent understanding of different sports and the demands of the sport. Your sport is considered as one of the most brutal sports around there, just because of the duration and what the body has to go through. So if you're on that start line and, if you want to do well, you have to go through extreme pain. How do you deal with that? Or is that something that comes up?
It's definitely part of, the nerves that you feel. You're sitting on that start line and you start to realize that you're about to put your body through a lot of pain, and that lactic acid is going to kick in, and your legs are going to be screaming at you and your lungs are going to be screaming at you, it's just you kind of just blank it out, and you don't want to think about it. It like comes into your mind and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so painful, and then you've got to like let it go out the other side, and you've got to then like focus on, okay, what are my starting strokes? How's that first stroke going to be? I've got to keep it like, make sure I'm keeping my blade in the water, and you just almost try and break it down and not think too far ahead. So same thing I was talking about before, you almost got to just like think about that first stroke, and then it's the second stroke, and then the third stroke, and then you kind of like move into the race. So it's not thinking too far ahead, because that can like really, it's almost like blurs your vision, and it takes over like the, I don't know what the word is now, but it just kind of, it doesn't allow you to just think about what is important right now. We always say that like we never think about the finish line until we get there. So you don't want to be sitting at the start and thinking about the finish line, because there's a whole lot of stuff you've got to do in between. So rather think about that. And the pain aspect definitely comes in there, but sometimes it's like, sure, it's going to sound maybe quite harsh coming from me, but like sometimes the pain is like, it's good, you like, know you're working hard. And I think the best thing about the pain is when you in the lead, which doesn't always happen that often, but when you are in the lead and you're feeling pain, then you're like, okay, now I'm going to inflict pain onto the people that I'm beating. And then you kind of like start thinking like that, and then you don't feel as much pain, they're feeling more pain. It's all a bit of a game, but I think as rowers, you get to a point where you actually start like loving it, and it's like a good feeling. You know that you're working hard, you know that you're making your body stronger, and that you're in the right place. So it maybe sounds a bit sadistic, but it's the pain can be good sometimes.
How do you overcome setbacks?
Sure. It's a tough one, because I think every setback is different. But most of the time, you almost got to take the time to like step away and think about it. Sometimes I can be like quite an emotional person, and I react like straight away, and you're not thinking clearly, about like what you're upset about, or whose fault it is or whose fault it isn't, or who performed or who didn't perform, or no, you almost like, so I like to think that, a good way for me to overcome the setback is to like step away from the situation, like think about it logically. Why did this happen? Were we prepared? So, say we're talking about a race that went badly, were we prepared? What went wrong in the lead up? Were we consistent in our training? Is there something that, was showing that we weren't aware of, like maybe a injury or illness or a performance in training that should have been better? So, I think just breaking it down and trying to like look at it logically and clearly is probably the best way, because then you can also like plan a way forward from there. You know, if you can look back and see like, okay, well, the training wasn't going well and I wasn't getting the scores that I was meant to, how am I going to change that going forward so that we can be better next time? So I think probably just breaking it down so you can put the right steps in going forward, I think would be the best way to do it. And it's definitely something that we learned as like we progressed as athletes, or as I progressed as an athlete, to just be a little bit more level-headed about things and try not be so emotional about results, and look at it a bit more logically.
Yeah. Okay. And I wanted to touch on what we spoke earlier. I saw you bravely talked about mental health issues in sports and the need for education on that topic. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, for me, it was like from personal experience. I had some trouble with mental health while I was rowing. Just obviously just started with not knowing how to maybe cope with my nerves and feeling like I needed help, and maybe being a little bit more emotional than other people. And I think I just thought that maybe there was something wrong with me. And why weren't other people struggling? Why was I the only one struggling? And I think, it wasn't like a big thing for us to like be seeing sports psychologists or getting help. And for a long time, it was kind of just like I felt like I was showing weakness if I wanted to go that route. So it took a while before I kind of just like knew that this is what I needed to do, and get like some direction from a sports psychologist and really put in some work to improve like the mental aspects of my sport. Like as I've spoken about, I struggled a lot with nerves, and I knew that I had to change something so I could cope with them. And that was what I had to do to cope with them. I had to get some help. I had to get some tools to be able to deal with those situations better. And for me, I think it's just giving people or giving athletes, they must feel like it's okay to look for help if they're not coping. Like we athletes, but we're also only humans, and we struggle, and we can't be strong all the time, and it's okay to ask for help. I mean, that's my opinion. And I know there are people out there who relate with me on this subject, and I just really, I just want to make it okay for athletes to be able to ask for help and admit when they're not coping, or when they're struggling. So, I think it's on that side, I think it's just definitely getting like our stories out there, and like relating with other athletes, and also just not making it like a bad thing to ask for help. There mustn't be a stigma around it. It's fine, and it makes you a better athlete. Like it made me a better athlete when I looked for help and I got it. So I think if I hadn't done that, it would have been worse. I would have been like holding all this stuff inside, not knowing what to do, and then it wouldn't have turned out very well, I don't think. So it's just and maybe not really educating, but just like making it okay in the sporting field, and it's not a weakness to reach out for help and the mental side of things.
Yeah, I think it's important to raise awareness for it, because I've heard athletes talking about it, and of course you don't want to talk about it as you outlined, because it's kind of showing a weakness. But I don't think it's uncommon.
No, it's definitely not uncommon. But I think people are just sometimes afraid to do it because of the stigma around maybe showing weakness. And I think that's something that we just need to eliminate, because it's really not a weakness at all.
Yeah. A question that pops up in my head is, if you would advise a younger athlete, I guess, so you mentioned you were a bit more emotional at times. And so I imagine if you go through a hard training cycle, it drains the body and it drains the mind. How can you distinguish whether the emotions you are going through are a side effect of the training, or whether it's something you really need to seek out to get help?
Sure. I think a lot of the time the training load can emphasize issues that maybe you're not dealing with outside of your sport. So I think that, like, the advice for me is that you kind of like constantly assessing what's going on in your life, whether it be in your sport or outside of your sport, and that you like aware of it, aware of how it's affecting you. And it's really just like being aware of yourself as a person, and knowing how things affect you, because definitely the training load after, you know, like we used to go up into the mountains in Lesotho, and we did like high altitude training. Then we were out there for 3 weeks, and we literally, you know, broke our bodies down, and you just exhausted, you absolutely exhausted. You finished off that training camp, and and emotions are high. I mean, I've had some very emotional times in those training camps, and I think you just have to make sure that you're not letting the emotions sort of like build up so much that they get in the way of the training. So it's making sure, like, as you feel like you're getting emotional, or you kind of talk about it, you know, even if it's like you just feel like it's something stupid. You're like, I don't know why I'm feeling emotional, or maybe I don't know why I'm like crying now, but like I feel like I need to speak about this. And then, you know, like go to a coach or whoever the support staff is there at the time, or someone you feel comfortable talking to, even if it's a teammate or something. Just like get it off your chest. And sometimes just doing that helps you to like realize, sure, okay, no, it is, I'm just exhausted by the training, or no, this is bothering me, I am missing my family from home, or, you know, it's something like that. So it's just like really listening to yourself, and being honest with yourself, and not trying to hide what you're going through. You know, everyone like at that stage is exhausted, and everyone's like going through it and feeling it. And maybe if you just like confide in a teammate, they might tell you that they're going through the same thing, and then you both feel better about yourselves. Okay. So yeah, I think just being like honest with yourself, and really listening to your body and your mind and what's going on, and allowing your emotions to like come out. Don't try and suppress them. You know, that I feel like that's the worst thing, is to suppress emotion. It makes things a lot worse.
Yeah, and they come back even stronger most often.
Yeah.
Who's your role model and why?
Sure. I mean, I definitely have athletes that I look up to in sport, and people who I love to watch. But I take like inspiration from like people around me all the time. I think I don't like look at one specific person. I'm like, they are my absolute hero. I think I have a lot of people that like inspire, just like friends. It can be just like a friend who's done something, and I'm like, that's amazing. That's so inspirational, and like just for that day, they will inspire me to do something. And I think like that's the great thing, is that like anyone can inspire you. You don't have to be like flipping Roger Federer, okay, is like my favorite tennis player, but you don't have to be him to like inspire someone. Like you can just be, you know, it can just be like a friend or a family member, or you know, like someone you know, and it doesn't have to be like something massive that they've done. I think like during this period as well, they've like we're in lockdown at the moment in South Africa with the coronavirus, and there's obviously been a lot of people like raising money and doing like amazing things while in lockdown, and there've just been like so many people who've like inspired me and been like, oh my gosh, you're amazing, look what you've done, like raising money and doing cool things. And it's just like stuff like that inspires me, like everyday humans. And it's even better if it's like a close friend of mine, because then I can like message them and tell them, or phone them. And I think that's what's awesome, is that there can be people like really close to you that can inspire you. And I think like the important thing to do is, if someone like does inspire you or motivate you, like tell them that they're doing that, because it's so important for them to feel like they're making a difference. And it's, so I wouldn't say I have one role model, but I try to look for inspiration, you know, all around me all the time.
I read in an article that you like Roger Federer. Why is that?
I'm not sure. I've always just been drawn to him. I think he's just so like cool, calm, collected. Yeah, he's just so cool. Like, I don't know how else to explain him. He's always just so calm, and he's like, everything's always in place. Like, his hair's always in place, and his clothes are always smart, and like, and he's just, that backhand of his is just like, oh, it's so sweet. And I just love watching him play. And I mean, he's like basically South African as well, so that makes it even better. Yeah, his mother's South African.
Ah. And his first coach was a South African guy.
Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't know that.
No,
but
that is actually...
Yeah, so we like to claim him.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think I've just always, I was like a keen tennis player when I was younger. And I always said I was going to play at Wimbledon. And I always just watched him from a young age. And I really, really enjoyed him as an athlete. And yeah, he's also just very, very good at what he does.
Cool. Yeah, there's a story about this. His first coach was his coach during all his youth. And apparently Roger Federer was, as a youngster, very different than he is nowadays. He threw rackets and he couldn't behave and stuff like that. And his coach always tried to change that. And then this coach passed away in a car accident on a honeymoon. And that was the day Roger Federer said, I'm not going to throw a racket anymore. I'm not going to misbehave anymore. And that's the day apparently everything changed. Carter Cater was the name. Yeah.
Okay, sure. That's a cool story. Well, sad story, but
powerful story.
Powerful story, I would say. Yeah. Wow.
And even nowadays, when he gets asked about this first coach, he still eyes either water up or he really starts crying.
Yeah, I'm sure. I can believe it. Sure, it must be very emotional for him. Yeah.
What is the best advice you received, and who gave it to you?
I really can't remember who gave this advice to me. And I think it might have actually been my psychologist at the time. But basically, one of the best things that I was told was just control what you can control. And I think it's something that's like really important and can be like taken into life as well, not just in sport, but so much of the time we're like worrying about what others are doing and what other people think. And in sport, we always like, how are they preparing? What are they doing? But like, you can't control what they're doing. So just do what you can do to the best of your ability and believe that that's enough. But yeah, like there's no point in wasting time thinking about what others are doing and how they're preparing. And as an athlete, that was always something that we said, we're like, control what we can control. And that's the most important thing, because we have no control over what other people are doing. So focus on ourselves, focus on what we're doing, that we keeping, the process going. And that's the most important thing for us. And then as well, just to add on that, another thing was just to keep it simple. Sometimes we can make things so complicated, but just stick to the basics. I think that's the most important thing in sport as well. Just sticking to the basics is really, really important.
Yeah. Okay, so back in the days, how did a typical training day look like?
Typical training day, it all depended on the day. Basically, we had different sessions on different days, but most of the time it included one water session at least, sometimes 2 water sessions a day. And then we had some days where we had like a ergo session in the morning, gym in the middle of the day, and then a water session in the afternoon. So I'd say that was probably only maybe twice a day. And then every other day was 2 sessions a day. And Sundays, normally just 1 session a day. And that kind of went in like a 6-week rotation. And then we get a Sunday off and then back onto another 6-week rotation. And then we obviously had different days where it was like, we just did like steady training. So just like a lot of endurance work. And then we had days when we had like race pieces and test pieces. And then, that was kind of how the week went. Yeah. So like six hours of training a day, I would say, on average. Yeah.
Quite intense.
Yeah, it was intense. And when you think about, it's not only like 6 hours, it's like getting to the venue and then warming up and cooling down, and then there's food. We eat a lot of food as rowers. We never stop eating. So it's always like, it's just like back from the session, food preparation, eat the food. Can I fit in a nap before the next session? Okay, yes I can, let's go. So yeah, you never felt like you had enough time in the day to rest, basically. Yeah.
At the moment, you're running an interesting project, the Girls Only project. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm actually just an ambassador for the project, but there's a psychologist in Durban who started the Girls Only project. Basically just raising awareness about the access that girls in South Africa and even Africa have to sport, and whether they can play sport or have access to facilities to play sport. And yeah, we basically just want to make sure that women are getting like equal opportunity as men to play sport. We need to start in our own country, but obviously everyone's looking for equality within the whole world. And I think it's something that I feel strongly about, and also the lady who started the project. So yeah, so at the moment, we're just trying to raise awareness through the project, and we started a podcast, which I'm hosting at the moment. And basically we're just sharing stories with other female athletes, and they don't have to be South African. We've obviously interviewed quite a few South Africans at the moment, but we really want to just go worldwide and speak to as many women as possible, hear their stories, their challenges, how they think we can help women to get more exposure in sport, equality, and just an even playing field for both men and women, basically, I think is what we're looking for the same attention. And you were spoken about like prize money. Some sports are giving the same prize money, some sports are giving different prize money. Why is that? How can we make it better? How can we change it? How can we change the way people see women in sport? Just like discussing those issues and challenges that we're currently facing.
You think you're facing more challenges in your own country than in other parts of the world?
I wouldn't say like I have enough knowledge maybe of other parts of the world, but I have no doubt that there are other parts that are struggling as much as we are. I think we're definitely making strides. We can see it. But these things take time. They really do take time to change people's minds. I think that you speak to women from other parts of the world, and they seem to have some of the same challenges. So I think there's definitely a connection worldwide. It may not all be the same challenges specifically, but I think we can definitely all relate to each other in some way or another. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to nominate someone to be interviewed?
I did have someone in mind, but they they're also a rower, and they are South African as well. But I would so it's another guy who rowed for me in our team at the time, Lawrence Britton. He actually had cancer for a while he was rowing, so he had to stop, and he fought cancer, and then he came back and he won a medal at the Rio Games. So I just inspiration, and just someone I look up to as well for what he's achieved and what he's overcome. And I think it would be a great person to hear from in terms of how he's dealt with everything. I think those stories are really inspirational. So if I had to nominate someone off the top of my head right now, I would say him. But I'll definitely give it some thought, and maybe find someone else as well, maybe in a different sport to nominate.
If you happen to know the dad of Chet Leclos, that would be an interesting one.
Oh, I do actually know a friend of his.
Is
So
it?
maybe, okay, let me see what I can do. Yeah, let me see
No,
what I can do. I could maybe get you in there.
I, I guess he just became famous through this interview he gave at the London Olympics, right? That was pretty cool.
Yes, yes. I'll see if I can get a contact for you.
What's going on in your life at this moment in time?
Sure. Well, at the moment, like I said, we in lockdown. Our country, well, whole world has obviously been hit by the coronavirus. And I am still working for a company that we do sporting events, hockey, indoor hockey. We focus on indoor hockey, and we have a clothing line as well. But we've obviously no one's at work at the moment. So we're not allowed out of our houses. So yeah, everything's looking a bit up in the air. We're not quite sure what the next step is, or it looks like we might be able to go back to work in about a week's time, but we're still waiting to hear from our government what they've decided. And so yeah, everything's a bit really up in the air at the moment. I had quite a few things planned this year, sports wise, and but obviously all those have now been put on hold because yeah, we're basically not allowed outside or in big crowds or any of that. So at the moment, just really I think putting a lot of focus into like my Girls Only Project podcast, and a lot of work into that, and seeing who we can get on the podcast. And yeah, just that's about it really. Hoping that we'll get back to work soon. But unfortunately, this pandemic has, I think, hit the world quite hard, and everyone's kind of in limbo. So it's quite hard to say what's going to happen next. But yeah.
And I saw you studied sports science, or you're still studying?
No, so I'm not studying anymore. I studied sports science when I was rowing. And then I did actually a sports management course once I left school, just to try and, get something like on top of my degree. But I actually did quite a bit of coaching once when I initially retired from sport, from rowing. And then, now I've kind of moved into this other company, which is more focused on events. So it's kind of a bit all over the place, not really using my degree much. But just trying to find what works for me, I think, and what I'm passionate about outside of rowing at the moment. Yeah.
You can also say you're an all-rounder, not all over the place.
An all-rounder. Okay, that's awesome. I really like that. I'm going to use that.
Where can people find you?
So pretty much where everyone else is found, but I have an Instagram account at Lee-Ann Persse, and on Facebook. I'm on Twitter as well. That's about it. That's where you can find me and follow what I'm doing.
And the Girls Only Project is also on Instagram, I saw.
Yes, they have an Instagram account, and they have a website as well that you can go and look at. The website is on their link is on the Instagram page.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely go have a look there, and then there'll be links to the podcast as well. Yeah. So if you're interested, go and have a listen. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed chatting to you. It was awesome.
Thank you.